Hello, my friends. Welcome to the show. I am Michelle Shelfun, and I am so happy to be here with you today. Today on the show, we're talking with Prema Gaia, and we are going deep into nervous system regulation. Who does not need that year round, but especially during the holidays? Yeah, so I think you're going to love the show today. And I just want to remind you, we've got the 52-week journal 50% off. It is $9.99. It's a gorgeous online journal, and you can start any week of the year. So it's one big journaling prompt every single week, and it's all online. So you can do it from your tablet, your phone, your laptop, or you can print them out. So I love this journal. It's so beautiful. And we have a gift option. So when you're checking out, you can actually put the recipient's name and the date that you want the gift to arrive in their inbox. It's so awesome. So you can send it as a holiday gift, as a birthday gift, whatever you want. It is a fabulous gift to give someone. It's so beautiful. Again, all online. Check it out at michelleshelfant.com/52week. With that said, we're going to jump right in to nervous system regulation with Prema Gaia. Enjoy the show. So welcome to the show, Prema Gaia.
Thank you so much for having me here, Michelle. Really excited to be here with you today.
I am so happy to join you. We have connected over the ethers out in the land of the internet. God bless the internet, because I think it gives people such a wonderful opportunity to connect. So we connected a few months ago, and knew we had to do the show together. And we are delighted to have you on to talk about nervous system regulation. We are going to go deep dive today with nervous system regulation. So thank you. And I know you do a lot of work in the world around this. So we're delighted to have you today.
Yeah, really excited to be here and to dive
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. Why don't we start out with I'd love to hear a little bit. You have a fascinating life journey. Let us know how you got to be where you are today and who you are today and all the things.
I'm just gonna hit the OK button there. Okay. Um, yes. So,
Hmm.
sorry, I just had to hit an OK button to make that bar go away.
Yeah.
um, mm. So, as they say, you teach what you most need to learn. And I've been on a long and humbling journey that has led me to where I am today, teaching this nervous system support work. And I'm also a meditation guide and a somatic coach. And this journey, I mean, I went really, really deep into nervous system work about 2 years ago. But I've been on a healing journey, a transformational journey ever since my teenage years. I grew up in an environment where I experienced a lot of trauma. And so for the first 18 years of my life, there was a lot of trauma and turbulence in my environment. And then from 15 to 25, I was using alcohol and recreational drugs as a way to numb my pain and to basically put my trauma on ice, because I didn't have tools, I didn't have any practices or resources to really work through the trauma that I had.
Hmm.
So, really sort of numbing and distracting and sort of um, living on a more surface level and sort of just, yeah, again, distracting with alcohol and recreational drugs. And I was also in my 20s, I was also using food to numb and to attempt to self regulate my nervous system so that I could feel calm and so that I could feel grounded, and sort of using different things to regulate my brain chemistry and my nervous system in a way that was completely unsustainable.
Hmm.
And in all of this, I ended up having a spiritual awakening. My first spiritual awakening was in 2001. And at that time, I stopped using all substances and started getting into yoga and meditation and became a vegan and a lot of things like that. But there was still a lot of deep healing to do.
Mhm.
And I ended up having a second spiritual awakening in 2006,
Mm,
in which my inner guidance guided me to give away all of my possessions until I only had the clothes on my back and start walking.
mm.
So I walked over 350 miles with no money and no possessions, just on a self directed vision quest, just listening to spirit. This was in a time before intuition and spirit guidance and inner guidance was really spoken about that much. And so I really, really needed to summon a lot of courage to give up my whole life as I had known it and go on this walking pilgrimage. And I was sleeping outside, sleeping on picnic tables, sleeping on back door steps of churches, and just really, really honing and learning how to decipher the voice of my inner guidance, my higher wisdom, and letting that guide me throughout the journey. So it was a
Mm.
very radical spiritual awakening that I had. And after that, I ended up hitchhiking over 20,000 miles,
Wow.
visiting spiritual teachers, intentional communities, sacred sites, shamans, and just really trying to understand why there's so much suffering in this world. Why had I suffered so much?
Mhm,
Why why do we experience such deep pain, and how can we liberate ourselves from this
mhm,
pain? And if I was able to do that, then how could I support other people in doing the same? And so really finding freedom and peace and supporting others in doing the same was my greatest driving force
mhm,
during this time. This was a long time ago. This was in,
mhm.
yeah, 2006. So that's 18 years ago now.
Wow.
Um, but what I didn't fully know at the time, I was taking a very spiritual avenue to all of this. And it's interesting because I was having these like Satori moments where like everything was making sense, and I was laughing and I was crying. And I had this one experience where I met this soul group of people in a certain town, and they recognized me, and they were crying and just saying like, one of them said to me, like, "I'm so happy you're here. I've missed you." And
Mm,
tears were streaming. And they were just like, "How can we support you? We see what you're doing. We know what you're doing." And another person said to me, I'm getting chills. They said, this is just, such a deep sign that the Aquarian age is here, that people are willing to give up everything and just dedicate their life to a spiritual pilgrimage. And so there were some people who really understood it, and
mhm,
it was so meaningful and significant to me. And but what I didn't realize is that I was really taking a uh, you could call it a spiritual bypass approach, because what I wasn't working on was my trauma. I was
mm,
working on meditating a lot and praying and being out in the wilderness by myself with the wild animals, and being with the stars and wild nature. And but I wasn't actually looking at my trauma or my defense patterns or my
mm,
coping mechanisms or my ancestral imprinting, none of that. There wasn't as much conversation going on around those modalities, 18 years ago. So anyway,
mm,
eventually I found myself to the humbling path of really going down and in and fully embodying and grounding myself. And that has been the missing piece of my journey to actually being able to be in service, which has been my deepest prayer for
mm,
so many years.
mhm,
Please show me, how can I serve? And without the embodiment piece and the nervous system support, I don't believe that it would be able for me to be able to serve in the way that I'm doing now.
mm. There's a lot to unpack based on what you just said. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, we need about a week to go through." I would like to hear, like, every single detail of your journey. That sounds incredible. Um,
Mm.
I wanna back up just a little bit. How did you know you said you had 2 spiritual awakenings.
Yeah.
For people listening, I'm curious to know, how did you know you were having a spiritual awakening? What does that look like? What does that feel like? What's going on in your life? Yeah.
It's so interesting because when I had my first spiritual awakening, almost nobody knew that word.
Uh-huh.
Like, now, since I heard one of my friends referred to COVID as like pretty much everyone on planet Earth just had a spiritual awakening this year, like, anyway, it's much more common in the collective
Mhm.
vocabulary now. But back in 2001, especially the lifestyle I had been in, living a very glamorous, fast-paced life. I was working in the modeling industry, living in the Hollywood Hills, going to these like A-list celebrity parties, and I was um, snorting cocaine sometimes, very sadly.
Mhm.
And yeah, binge drinking on alcohol, being more than elegantly wasted. And yeah, so I felt internally there was something inside me that was like, this is a ticking time bomb. This is
Mhm.
not sustainable.
Mhm.
Plus, to live that lifestyle I was living, I was, dieting a lot.
Mhm.
My relationship with food, it was like I wasn't treating my body as this precious, sacred, you know, mammalian vessel ally that I get to do life with. I was like, I was
Mm.
basically using my body with
Mhm.
chronic dieting, exercising sometimes for
Mhm.
several hours a day. And then, sometimes long fasting, but not from a place of I just really want to cleanse. It was like I was just really wanting to get a certain result from my body. And there's an expression called borrowing from the future. I don't know
Mm.
if you've heard that expression. I was borrowing from the future a lot back then. And it's a very, very sad place to be. It doesn't work and it's not sustainable. So, um, so there was a turning point moment where, um, in that particular spiritual awakening, I met up with an old friend who had also stepped onto a path of somewhat renunciation,
Mhm.
doing a lot of long Vipassana retreats, and was just so lucid and so clear and so in his soul essence that it was a huge transmission for me because I had never heard anyone speak like that about their spiritual path.
Wow.
And so I said to this friend, I was like, he was talking about this lineage and this book about meditation. And I was just like, I have to have this book. And I think he was kind of skeptical to even give me a book about meditation because he wasn't sure if I would even read it or if it would just
Mhm.
kind of go on the shelf because I didn't really, that wasn't my lifestyle at all. I wasn't living like that.
Mhm.
So he did generously give me the book, which changed my life. And I ended up after meeting up with him, I went and met up with another friend and we drank and I got drunk, which was one of the ways I used to endeavor to process
Mhm.
overwhelming emotions in those days.
Mhm.
And I ended up missing my flight the next day. So I was stranded in Heathrow Airport in England for 24 hours in 2001 before there was Wi-Fi and smartphones
Oh.
with nothing to do, nothing to pass the time except to read this entire book from cover to cover about as the universe orchestrates these
Good.
synchronicities.
That's what I'm thinking. Everything happens for a reason. For
Yeah.
us. For
Yeah.
us. Yeah, I love that. Sorry. I was like, "Oh my god, how perfect." You had the chance to read the book.
Yeah. So I read the whole book from cover to cover and I was like, oh my gosh, every single thing in my life needs to change.
Mhm.
My entire life has been based on an illusion.
Mhm.
So, things like I had this modeling portfolio and I was like, everything like that, I was like, this needs to go in the recycle bin. I'm not
Mhm.
even keeping this because
Mhm.
anything that was anchoring me to these coping mechanisms that were trying to create some sense of worth for me, I was like, those are the things that need to go first. So
Mhm.
because I had a deeply low, deeply low self-esteem
Mhm.
because of messaging I had received growing up with the traumatic background that I experienced. So I had very low self-esteem and I was desperately trying to prove my worth through my appearance, which is never sustainable because
Mhm.
we live, if we're blessed, we live long lives and appearance changes over time. And it's just, I was trying to anchor my worth to things that are not where worth comes from,
Mhm.
and just really trying to prove that I had value and that that I was worth connecting with,
Mm.
worth people's time and energy. The low self-esteem was so, so deep.
Mhm.
And it actually wasn't until working with plant medicine that I actually really, really was shown by the plant spirit medicine. I was shown my lovability in a way that's unwavering and can never be shaken. But it
Mm.
actually took, I was actually, I actually did not know how to love myself for the first, I think, 37 years of my life. I was walking around on the planet, going through the motions, smiling brightly,
Mhm.
smiling and nodding, doing my best. I didn't know how to love myself.
Mhm.
It's really, really tragic when you think about that many years, year in, year out. You get out of bed, you go through the motions, you do your best to show up, but you actually don't love yourself.
Mhm.
And I experienced that. And I think that's one of the reasons that I have so much empathy for for the human condition, because I've been through, a lot of things. Like, for example, anyone who would use cocaine, I mean, there's no such thing as a good amount or healthy amount.
Mm-mm.
It's just the
Mm-mm.
whole thing is a very, very sad choice. And
Mhm.
these are choices that we make when we aren't honoring ourselves. And so I'm just so grateful that all the mentors and even just those people who planted a little seed along the way that was a turning point. I'm just so grateful they all showed up in the moment where that turning point was needed.
It's beautiful. Because you're right. The term spiritual awakening. I mean, gosh, everyone's having a spiritual awakening now, and but there are people, of course, that sit and say, "What is this? What is this that I'm feeling inside?"
Mhm.
It feels like when people share with me, it's like a knocking from the inside out, like their soul's knocking, going, "Hello, hello," or you're given
A
that
thousand
book,
percent, that's exactly what it
right?
is.
Like you're
The
given that
soul is
book.
like,
You're
I'm not willing to be on the back burner anymore. I'm coming into the driver's
yeah,
seat now. Like,
yeah.
get used to it. Orient
Get
yourself
out
around
of
this
the
because I'm
way.
taking the steering wheel now.
Get out of the way. I'm going to drive now. Could you sit in the passenger seat, please? I don't like
Yep.
you. Yeah, I don't like how we're living our lives. Yeah, I really resonate with your gosh, until age 37 that it's like we have had parallel lives. So thank you for that vulnerability there. I really appreciate it. And very much relate to every single thing you just said. And I'm sure so many others can relate to it as well. So yeah, so for people listening then, when you feel that it seems like our souls, like our higher self, whatever you want to call it, spirit, that to me it's all the same. Higher self, soul, spirit guides, all the things. We get very slight little nudges or taps on the shoulder and then a whisper and then eventually it's like wake up.
And a kick in the pants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
So
are
it's
you
so good for
doing?
us to listen as early on as we can. And that's one of my
Yeah.
deepest prayers. And when I
Yes.
lead prayers or guided meditations, that's one of the things that I always invoke for all of us, that we can hear the guidance clearly and that
Yes.
we can follow it in the early stages. And it's just like I'm on my knees with that prayer, in full prostration, because it's a daily practice. And there are so many distractions, as we all know, in this world. And there's so many shiny, bright objects that we can, go over here.
Mhm.
But yeah, coming back to the inner guidance and the intuition is so, so key. And that's, one of the reasons that, I studied the lives of saints and sages for many, many years. I've read the lives of saints, sages, shamans, probably hundreds of biographies of them, because I wanted to understand, how did they get free? How did they find peace? How did they reconnect with the inherent joy of our souls? Because our
Yeah.
souls are inherently very
Yeah.
joyful and very peaceful. So,
Mhm.
how did they find their way back to that? And so, that's one of the reasons that I did two solo 20-day retreats 2 years in a row. And one of them in the Gila wilderness, uh, I went out on I had someone we rode out on a donkey, and I was dropped off in a place where I wouldn't see or hear anyone else for the duration of the 20 days. It was completely like deep out in the wilderness,
Oh my gosh.
because I was like, my one of the most important things that I need to do in this lifetime is reconnect myself to my channel, to source, because I
Mhm.
knew from
Mhm.
all the lives of sages that I read, that we all have access to this connection to source, to the unified field,
Mhm.
to this same wisdom pool. And I just knew, I was like, I need to reconnect myself as to this source, to this wisdom stream as my top priority. And so I,
Mhm.
just went out there, um, and did that 20-day solo retreat in the Gila wilderness. And I did find the connection to source that I was looking for. And what I realized is it's actually so innate and so inherent. And you don't need to
Mhm.
ride a donkey out into the wilderness to find it. but but man, it's like, this is our birthright. This is second nature. We all have the same connection to the same source. And when you see someone that is channeling, and the wisdom and, the beautiful words are coming through them, that is a reflection of you, and you have access to that exact same source. And I'm just really grateful that I had a chance to have that experience,
Mhm.
inside of my bones, so that I could feel that reconnection. And it's also an important part of my work now, because
Mhm.
I'm a very soul guided nervous system educator or somatic
Mhm.
coach. I
Mhm.
mean, um, I'm a very sort of mystical nervous system educator.
I like that. I
A
like
very
that though. That's
mystically
great.
oriented nervous system educator. So
But wait,
I would
I
have
want
never thought that this breakthrough in my work would come, where my work is reaching so many people around the world, would come from nervous system education. But this is how Spirit orchestrated it.
I want to just back up before we get into that, and I want to go into nervous system next. But something that you said was so profound around you spent 20 days alone. You did it twice, you said?
Yeah, I did one
Twice.
in a mud hogan. It's a traditional Native American mud
Mm-hmm.
hut. I have an amazing mentor who lives a very, very primitive life in deep communion with Mother Earth.
Mm-hmm.
His name is Wayne Boone. He's a beautiful soul, and that was his mud hogan that he let me go do a 20-day retreat in
Mm-hmm.
Tres Piedras, New Mexico.
Mm.
And then the year after, I went out and met up with Wind again. And then his friend we rode out on a donkey deep into the wilderness to do another 20-day retreat. And at a certain point, I wasn't sure if this was going to become a part of my life. Am I meant to be doing long
Mm.
retreats every year?
Mm-hmm.
um, I had very, very clear guidance, because I had actually, given away all my possessions. I had shaved my head. I was living a renunciant lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
I was not using money. I was doing bartering. I was wild crafting. Wind taught me a lot about harvesting wild food and all the wild edible plants. So I was living a very unusual lifestyle. And Spirit guided me very strongly right around 2012 to come fully back into more an urban environment and
Yeah.
start studying leadership and entrepreneurship. And it was really, really challenging to reorient myself, because I had gotten extremely accustomed and loved being out in the wilderness alone by myself. I got so used to it. And um, so, yeah.
I, I love that. And what was occurring to me was how the world that most of us humans live in today is a very distracted life
Yeah.
experience. We have our phones next to us 247. We are constantly picking up our phone to check email, text, social media, WhatsApp, Vox. I mean, there's so many apps on the phone alone. And I find now I notice when I walk through airports, most heads are, you know, we're like this. Our heads are down and there's less interaction. I mean, people are, of course, are talking, but it's just such a different lifestyle. And you take that extreme opposite that you had, which is spending time alone. And when we start this awakening journey and learning how to connect to the part that's part of who we are, it's not out there outside of self, it's within self. So getting
Mm.
quiet is such a beautiful way. I mean, you've only got you. You've only got
Yes.
you, and you've got to turn
Yes.
inward. That was like a fast track to awakening because you're not
Mhm.
going out there. You're not looking for even a mentor. And I understand the importance of mentors, and I'm not discounting them at all. I've had my fair
Mm.
share. But ultimately, what I too have discovered is that the path home is going inside. It's not out there, it's in here.
1,000%.
And man, to spend 20 days, I'm thinking, God, I'd love that. Like that would be. pretty incredible. So anyway, thanks for that. That was what an incredible experience that was twice, not just once, but twice. So let's shift
Yeah.
over then to nervous system. So let's talk about this a little bit. This word, this phrase, I should say. When did it become? I mean, everyone's talking about nervous system regulation for what, like maybe 10 years ago? It got really not even. How many years
Not
ago?
even. It seems like it became really, really front and center in the collective conversation probably about 6 years ago, and then in
Yeah.
20 and then with COVID in 2020, it was
Yeah.
everyone was talking about it. Yeah.
So, how would someone know? I want to learn about what that even means, but I also
Yeah.
want to understand for the audience too, explain how would someone know that they even need nervous system support? What is it? What is it? What do their lives look like? How do you know? How would they know? So, tell us what it is, and also how would I know that? Wow, I think I need nervous system support. I've been looking
Yeah.
over here and this and this and this, and what I really
Yeah.
need is to get inside of myself and regulate my nervous system.
Yeah. Yeah, so I created this course, I think it's like about a year and 8 months ago now or something like that. And the course now has over 22,000 people from around the world, over 22,000 students. So I've had so many different people coming into the course classroom and sharing why they want to learn how to regulate their nervous systems. But in a nutshell, I mean, becoming an active operator of our nervous system and understanding how it works,
Hmm.
and how to bring ourselves into a more parasympathetic state of rest and
Hmm.
relaxation, feeling grounded and safe and resourced in our bodies is the overarching intention of nervous system regulation work. But with all of the research that's been happening over the past decade or and beyond, I mean, it's definitely been the research has been going on much more than that. But with all of the research that's been going on, what people are discovering and what, neuroscientists and nervous system educators are discovering is that there's so many things that can be going on with your health where if you focus on regulating your nervous system first and foremost, a lot of those things will fall away or be tremendously improved. So chronic pain, chronic illnesses, people come to nervous system work who have things like Lyme disease, who have POTS, who have people who have had chronic stress at any point in their lives where it's just been backing up for years,
Hmm.
even if it's just an intense commute through an urban environment for, an hour in the morning, an hour in the evening each day. Like these things
Hmm.
really backlog your nervous system and really really build up over time. But a lot of people come to nervous system work who had childhood trauma,
Hmm.
and that could be big T trauma or more subtle trauma of emotional neglect or some sort of verbal abuse, or there's many different reasons that people might come to nervous system work. And then someone who's been through some sort of adversity, like being in a country where there was war, or I mean, there's a lot of people who come to nervous system work who have experienced being in a country where there was war, conflict. So things that are scary, that are stressful, that are overwhelming,
Hmm.
that haven't been metabolized, those can really add up for us to end up having sort of a pattern of pumping out some of these stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, and not having our dose chemicals, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins not working
Hmm.
as well as they would be had we not been through chronic stress, adversity, trauma. Um, and these things are often some of the underlying roots of some of these chronic illnesses, chronic health conditions, chronic pain as well. So, I mean, anyone who's got something major going on with their health, if they haven't already done some digging into nervous system regulation or learning more how their nervous system works, learning how to become an active operator of their nervous system, learning how to turn on their parasympathetic response, which is the
Hmm.
down regulation,
Hmm.
rest and digest. And I could just share, just to
Yeah.
sort of like make it more concrete, I can share a little bit from my own journey.
Yeah.
So, growing up in an environment where I didn't feel safe as a child. I didn't feel safe through my formative years and my adolescence. So what happened for me was I developed hypervigilant
Mhm.
response of always tracking for safety and danger. And this, interestingly, what happens when someone has developed some level of hypervigilant response, or if there's a lot of trauma or adversity, what can often happen, and neuroscientists have studied this, is that the amygdala, which is known as the brain's threat detection center, actually expands in volume. It gets bigger. So the part of your brain that's there to help you detect threat literally gets more, it gets larger. The volume gets bigger. If
Mhm.
I would have known and understood how my amygdala worked years ago, see what happened for me was I would go down the rabbit hole
Mhm.
big time, and I could get lost in what's called amygdala hijack. I could get lost for like 2 or 3 days if something triggered me and frightened me. I
Mhm.
could go just these loops, and this was a long time ago, so it's like I mean, I'd have to really think about how that would go for me, but what I do remember is that I could be sort of not really available for a couple of
Mhm.
days to really
Mhm.
be to fully show up or hold, or it just would knock me out.
Mhm.
Um,
And you might have
and so
fatigue, overwhelm, all of these things.
I think, like, for
How would you
example,
know?
like if I was like meant to be, because I've been studying things like, well, because I've been on a healing path, I've been on a healing path for, I guess, about 25 years now. So I've been studying all different things like, everything from nonviolent communication, compassionate communication to, ancestral healing to shamanism, everything in between. But for example, I used to teach years ago, I used to lead these compassionate communication circles. And I would be in leadership in certain ways, even though I hadn't fully, healed certain aspects of like my nervous system and things like that.
Mhm.
But if I were called to show up and hold space for something like that, if something had triggered me and really thrown me into like an amygdala hijack, I wouldn't be able to show up and hold space. I just
Mm.
wouldn't, I couldn't get myself back. I didn't know how to get myself back in
Mhm.
a timely manner. And I didn't know how to, I didn't know how to rebalance my brain chemistry in a holistic way, like, for example, cold water therapy, ice baths, things that can get you back very quickly. I didn't understand there's so many things. And also boundaries has a lot to do with it too,
Mhm.
not having healthy boundaries and taking things on sometimes that
Mhm.
aren't yours. I mean, as the healing journey is so multifaceted, but things like just understanding how the amygdala works and that it can go into hyperactivity would have been such helpful information for me many years ago.
Mhm.
Um, and then just some simple self-regulation tools, understanding how cold water therapy works, understanding things like that, things like taking a sauna, alternating with cold water can palpably shift our brain chemistry within a short period of time to where whatever was troubling us is manageable, or even just things like immersing ourselves in cold water in the lake or the ocean or the waterfalls or whatever. All of those things are just such an excellent reset. And then there's so many self-regulation tools that I teach now, but I basically was on a path of self-healing and working with different healers and even went to healing school for so long, but nobody had ever taught me how to regulate my nervous system. So
Mhm.
we would go into these like catharsis type of situations where we're screaming and punching pillows, cranking our cortisol and our adrenaline voluntarily without knowing how to self-regulate. And this happens a
Mm.
lot in the healing world these days. And
Mhm.
it's something that I talk about in my course of not pushing ourselves out of our window of tolerance,
Yeah.
which is also known
Yep.
as your zone of resiliency,
Yep.
which is your functional range where you can function at a good level, not pushing yourself out of it in a way that you knock yourself out in the name of
Mhm.
healing to where you're dysfunctional for 48 hours and can't. Plus, a lot of these things can lead to adrenal burnout, which is
Right.
something that I deeply experienced. I went through a deep phase of burnout where I was exhausted quite a
Mhm.
lot of the time.
Mhm.
And yeah, so just knowing some of these things, also knowing about our body's circadian rhythms and how to honor my body's rhythms. And so I basically compiled sort of, I want to say a cornucopia, a compendium of all of the things that I would have loved to offer to my 15-year-old self. Oh my gosh, I would have loved to offer these to my 15-year-old self
I
before she
love
started
it.
drinking,
Yeah, no kidding.
before. before she started drinking, before she started using recreational drugs, and before she started um, emotionally eating and self-regulating with food. Yeah.
So thank you. That was a lot. I want to break that down a little bit as well. So someone that's listening, they might know that they are dysregulated, let's say, with
Yeah.
they have nervous system dysregulation because they're checked out, they're sleeping a lot, they're overwhelmed, they're stressed, they're fidgety, they are what else? What would be some signs for them to look at,
Yeah.
hey, maybe this because kind of like you said, and I do agree and want to say to you, yes, all these people that have a lot of physical ailments, that physical ailment is secondary to the nervous system dysregulation. So when you can get to the core, which is the dysregulation, perhaps
Mhm.
you're going to find a
Yeah.
great improvement then in your physical health. So what would be, I'm just thinking about just any person that's listening.
Yeah.
I'm anxious, I'm depressed, I have chronic stress, I'm overdoing, I'm not
Mhm.
slowing down, I'm busying myself, I'm addicted to social media, whatever it might be. Are there
Yeah.
like classic indicators for dysregulation that you see? Or are they really truly all over the
Yeah,
board?
definitely. I I'm thinking of actually on my website nervoussystemsupport.org there's a list of basically everything you mentioned
Hmm.
plus things like feeling really overstimulated in crowds, feeling
Yeah.
overstimulated at noises, bright lights,
Oh,
feeling like you
that's
might
me.
fragment or disassociate in
Yeah.
environments like a concert or airport, just feeling like you have a hard time staying um, grounded and in your body and feeling calm in different environments, or even taking the subway or
So
the tube as they call it in London. I mean, all of these things are quite
so
overstimulating, and yeah,
I want to ask you about that. So
yeah.
is that nervous system dysregulation that we can do something about? Or,
Mm.
and then we have the term, I'm an empath, I'm energetically
Yeah,
sensitive, I'm
yeah,
this. What if we have all those things? Like, can
yeah,
we go to a concert and feel anchored in
yeah.
if we're an empath or highly
There's
sensitive?
ways to manage it with tools.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in the course that I created, the nervous system support course, I think there's at least over 20 different tools that
Great.
people can use so they can find the one. There's probably at least 30 tools actually. The people can find the ones that work the best for their unique body, because and then you can also change the tools and adapt them when you discover sort of what works well for you. But I
Mm,
always like to say that every single one of us is our own greatest healer. And that was the biggest thing that I learned on my healing journey, was
mm,
that every single person listening to this call, the answers to your unique the recipe for your unique medicine will be found within you, and also the guidance about which tools are right for you. You'll
mhm.
get all that guidance from your body's signals, your interoception, which is your
Yeah.
body's way of signaling and communicating with you. um, I do identify as a highly sensitive person. The scientific term for that is having sensory processing sensitivity. So I
Mhm.
do identify with that. I do try to hold it lightly. I don't call myself an empath too much, but I mean,
Mhm.
I definitely could say that that's part of my makeup, but I try to hold those terms a little bit lightly. More, what I'm more interested in is tools that work, tools
Mhm.
that make it manageable to navigate where it wasn't manageable to navigate, tools that make it actually fun to do some of these things.
Mhm.
And then there's this notion of titration,
Yep.
where
Yep.
if you're going to go to, for example, if you're going to go to this big, exciting event with tons of people and you're someone who gets overstimulated, just knowing how long you have a sense you can stay there for, and then going and having some quiet time, and honoring that and not
Yeah.
making it wrong. Because what we used to do back in the day was people would then just go have a glass of champagne or a beer or something,
Totally.
or they would do
Yes.
something to, you know,
Bring
basically in an
themselves down. Yeah. Let me
way.
bring myself down and numb out so I don't have to feel all the stimulation
Yeah.
out there that's
What
going
I'd
to
like to
trigger
do
my.
is normalize that we can go off into a corner and do our eye exercises. Eye exercises are a great way to regulate the nervous system. We can go do our ear massage tools. We can go do our havening, which is
Mhm.
wrapping your arms around yourself, stroking
Mhm.
up and down from your shoulders to your elbows,
Mhm.
doing some box breathing,
Mhm.
4 breathing. I'm really passionate about normalizing
Mhm.
self-regulation in
Mhm.
social contexts, like with your friends. Let's go self-regulate together,
Mhm.
rather than let's go grab another drink. Like,
Yeah.
why can't we normalize, hey, I'm getting a little overstimulated. Do you want to go do some of our VU breathing in the corner and just ground and hold hands and just, I mean, I call it nerdy, but I'm all about normalizing self-soothing.
I
I
don't
just
think
think
it's
it's,
mm-mm. That's not nerdy. That is like healthy to me. Like, yes,
yeah.
let's all go do
So
that.
totally. So I taught this nervous system regulation workshop at Envision Festival in March of this year, and that's like one of the biggest and noisiest wellness festivals. But it's it's quite a potent environment with lots going on, and I taught these tools to a lot of the participants in this festival, and I told them, like, go find each other during the
Yeah.
festival and just go gather around in a circle and do your VU sounding and do your co-regulation practices and do, because co-regulation, the way that I describe it is co-regulation and self-regulation are like the two wings of a bird. So I
Mhm.
also love, giving people simple co-regulation practices. Which include, synchronizing breathing with another person and just
Mhm.
grounding with some gentle touch with another person. But I basically felt that it was really helpful, early on in the festival to give the festival participants a bunch of these self-regulation and co-regulation tools so they might feel less inclined to do what I might have done years ago, which is disassociate with whatever
Right.
substance or whatever the thing is.
Yeah.
So it's really helpful in an environment like that. And again, titration, like going off somewhere quiet and doing some of your practices with, you know, I mean, I have a PDF with like six of the top tools
Mhm.
that I like to teach. And in the categories are eye exercises, ear massage techniques, because we
Mhm.
have tons of
Yeah.
acupressure points on
Mhm.
the ears, plus the auricular branch of the vagus nerve goes behind the ear. You can access that in a tactile way. Vocal toning, and there's several different things I teach on that. Breathing techniques,
Mhm.
cold water therapy, and self-applied touch. Those are some of the categories, and there's many, many more. But just
Mhm.
to break down, in case people really have no idea what those self-regulation tools might look like, that's just a little bit of a overarching synopsis of what some of them are.
That's awesome. So I think about the nervous system as being what I call, I don't even know this is a term. I think I made it up, but maybe I didn't. But this is what I've used for years. But it can be hot, meaning it's overstimulated, or
Yeah.
it's down regulated. And that's when we
Yes.
want to get out of, we're depressed. I mean, they're saying now depression is simply a dysregulated, down regulated nervous system that's kind
Mhm.
of
Mhm.
stuck.
Yeah.
Versus the upregulated is anxiety.
Yeah.
So can you give us two or three ways, let's say, if you're somebody that has an upregulated nervous system, meaning I feel hyper, manicky, I'm like jittery, I'm overstimulated, all of those terms, if they're accurate. What can we do to bring ourselves down and back in balance?
Yeah. Yeah, great. Yes. Well, one of the tools that almost any nervous system educator teaches is a tool called the basic exercise, which is also known as the vagus nerve reset, which
Mhm.
was popularized by a wonderful craniosacral teacher named Stanley Rosenberg, who
Mhm.
wrote the book Accessing the Healing Power of the Vagus Nerve. So,
Mm,
if you're listening and you are able to do this now,
mhm.
we can try it together just for a short while. And if not, then
Yeah.
you can try it if you're driving, you can try it, when you get home. But basically, you're going to interlace your hands and then place your hands behind your head, like so that your thumbs are right around the base of your skull.
Mhm.
And then you're going to keep your face forward, but you're going to bring your eyes all the way over to the right side first. And then you're just going to take some deep breaths there, keeping your face forward. And you would hold it over there for about 60 seconds. And eventually, you might feel a yawn,
Mm.
a sigh, a swallow, or some saliva starting to pool in your mouth. And those are all signs of down regulation. And then you can bring your eyes over to the left side. I usually find that it's this on the second side that I start to notice my system down regulating.
Yeah, I just noticed.
All up and down.
All of a sudden, I feel this, oh, like jello.
Yeah. This one I do a lot. It's nice to do it lying down,
Yeah.
and it actually helps to align your.
Mm.
It's hard to do this and talk at the same time.
Yeah, it is. And for those of
Yeah,
you
so we
that are
can
not looking,
you put
we're
your
on
hands back
YouTube.
down,
We're on YouTube,
but
so you can come check it
it
out.
helps to align your first and second cervical vertebrae, your atlas and your
Oh.
axis.
Are
So
you
that's
putting
why
your
you're
hands
holding
on that
the head.
occipital ridge right there on top? Is that what you're putting your hands?
My hands are basically holding the base of my skull.
Got it.
So my thumbs are right underneath my occipital ridge.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I do this one a lot. It really, really makes a big difference. Like, so if you do that for like about 60 seconds on either side, and sometimes you can go back and do it, on the other side again, but you'll really notice a difference. It really does help to shift things and help to bring you more into a relaxed state. So that's like a go-to that we always teach. I always teach this on my on my on my online classes. But eye exercises in general are a really, really helpful one. And then um, I like to do the VU breathing is a really
Mm.
popular one
Mhm.
for down regulation. But these practices, both the basic eye exercise and the VU breathing, not only do they help in times of dysregulation, but they help also to build what's known as vagal tone or vagal efficiency. So it's like a muscle. So you're building your vagal efficiency because oftentimes with the chronic stress, trauma, and adversity, the vagus nerve is not working at its optimum. So these
Mm.
practices help to build vagal tone. So we can try one of the ones that comes from yoga is Brahmari breathing, where you plug your ears and then you make a sound like a bumblebee. I like that one. And you can also do that with the VU breathing. So I think let's try a combination of the Brahmari with the VU breathing. So
Mhm.
you just make the sound like a deep sound of VU.
Ooh,
So we're
okay.
gonna plug our ears and you'll notice you can feel the vibration, and the vagus nerve goes all the way from the brain stem
Mhm.
all the way down through both sides of the neck, all the way down through
Okay.
many organs and down to the gut. So this is something that vibrates the whole vagus nerve
Ooh,
pathway. So we can plug our ears.
okay.
And this is one that's really, really helpful to do if you get overstimulated and you just want to come back into your own frequency. It really helps you to just kind of ground back in your own energy, and just sort of like dissolves the chaos around if you do this like a few times. So let's try it together. Um, so we're gonna, if and for those listening, if this is available to you, if you're not driving, and even if you are driving, you can still do the VU breathing without plugging your ears.
Mhm.
So just noticing and checking in with your interoception and noticing what happens if you can feel the vibration, the vibrating through down your throat, down your chest. So we're going to plug our ears and we're going to do the VU sound together.
Okay.
So take a deep breath in.
Mm, 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 mm. Oh. Mm, mm, mm. You have to come watch us on YouTube.
What's that?
Thank you. I said they have to come watch us on YouTube to see that. It's funny
You can
looking.
watch it, but you can also just, I
Yeah.
mean, my 10-day course is
Yeah.
actually an audio course. So I'm
Yeah.
teaching everything via audio. I do have YouTube videos that on my YouTube
Yeah.
channel also,
Yeah.
which then visually show you the practices in case you're a visual learner. But those
But
are
I,
two really great ones that build vagal resiliency and also can help you. Um,
but
I
that is to
do
down regulate. Well, that's down regulating both of those. And my other question was, do
They're
those
both down regulating, but like I said, they also build vagal tone. So it helps in general to balance out and to build nervous system resiliency.
that was my
With
next
regards to
question.
if
Yeah.
you're someone who is in sort of like a shutdown or
Mhm.
a freeze or more of a dorsal vagal,
Mhm.
um, things sometimes like cold water therapy. Like I was going through a really hard time at one point when I was in a place that had an ice bath,
Mhm.
and I was working with the ice bath as a way of boosting my dopamine and boosting my my brain chemistry in a healthy, sustainable way. But what I then realized at a certain point, I was like, what I actually need more than anything right now is actually a hot bath and more yin energy. So if someone is in that more shut down or depressed state, things that are more nourishing and grounding and bringing that comforting energy, and like taking a hot bath rather than going and like disciplining yourself to get in that ice bath for 3 minutes, like things that are more nourishing and resourcing like that, would be really helpful just to get things moving.
Mhm.
And they say that the freeze state, so there's the shutdown state where it's more of a collapse. And
Mhm.
I was in that years ago. Um, and so I know that train.
Mhm.
And in that train, we need a lot of nurturance, a lot of comforting, a
Mhm.
lot of self-care and
Mhm.
sweetness. So things like havening can be good for
Mhm.
that, which is where we can try it together,
Mhm.
where
Yeah.
you bring your hands up and down your arms from your shoulders up to
Mhm.
your or from elbows up to your shoulders,
Mhm.
and then doing some breathing along with that, some kind of balancing breathing, like breathing in for 4,
Mhm.
out for 4, breathing in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4.
Mhm.
So let's try that one,
Yeah.
just one round.
Yeah.
So we're going to do the evening, stroking up and down the arms, and then we're going to
Mhm.
breathe in for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, and hold for 4.
Mhm.
And this is just a really comforting,
It is.
balancing
Mhm.
breathwork technique. I find within like 30 seconds of doing that, I feel comforted. I feel that sense of comfort. So looking for things, especially if you're in more of a dorsal vagal shutdown, looking for things that are comforting but in a sustainable way, because oftentimes we reach for things like um, comfort food, like
Yeah.
sweets or chocolate or um, cookies or ice cream and things like that, and just understanding that the enteric nervous system, um, and which is the enteric nervous system and our enteric nerves, this is all very, very related to the central nervous system, and things that we're doing that aren't sustainable for our gut health
Mhm.
really then impact our nervous system well-being. So it's also interrelated. So for myself, with the years of using um, alcohol, recreational drugs, and then emotionally eating for several years, all of that impacts our dopamine levels. So
Mhm.
being able to do things that tend to our gut health, like even eating things like sauerkraut, probiotic rich foods,
Mhm.
taking probiotics and things like that. This all helps to get us back into a more vibrant state where our dopamine levels are naturally higher and more balanced.
Mm. Mhm.
The other thing I wanted to mention is that the freeze state is often referred to as a combination. It's like a blended state. It's often referred to as a combination of shutdown with hyperarousal. So it's like the gas pedal is on, but the brake is also on at the same
Mhm.
time. And I
Mhm.
know that I had that at some time, like functional freeze, where I was just, and I think that's when I was using substances just to keep it together,
Mhm. Sure.
that
Sure.
functional freeze. And that being in that kind of state also requires um, a lot of self-care and self-soothing to kind of like defrost those patterns,
Mhm.
and let ourselves melt into, the sweetness of our own care. And there's a phrase from the somatic experiencing modality called um, working with your own mammalian caregiving system. And I love that
Mm.
phrase,
Mhm. Yeah.
working with your own mammalian caregiving system. So rather than what so many of us have done with this whole dieting thing, or using sedating with alcohol or whatever it is, cannabis, working with our mammalian caregiving system, which every mammal naturally knows how to self-soothe and self-care and
Mhm.
tend to themselves and to their babies, and activating that in ourselves so that we are comforting and soothing and nurturing ourselves with our own touch. And things like, for example, There's a practice called Abhyanga from the Ayurveda tradition, which is
Mhm.
oiling your whole body with
Mm.
a oil like sesame oil, which is very warming, which is really helpful for people who have nervous system dysregulation. So oiling your whole body and then massaging yourself. And these are all things that help you work with your own mammalian caregiving system, just to come back into that real loving space, loving relationship with your body again.
I love it. Beautiful. Wow, this was so much. Thank you for all of the tools and the tips and the ideas on how to help regulate our nervous systems. It's such incredible work. Um, Anything else before we close up today?
Oh my gosh, there's like 100 more
I
things
know,
I want
I'm
to share.
like, that was wrong question. uh,
I guess, we just scratched the surface of some of the tools and practices. Um, I went on a journey of doing over 300 hours of research. At a certain point in time, I got the guidance that I was meant to bring forward a body of work because I kept on wondering, like, why has nobody created a compendium of
mhm,
simple body-based tools to self-regulate the nervous system, to grounding tools, and ways to bring us into a state of more feeling safe and feeling calm and grounded in our bodies. I was wondering, why hasn't that been created? And the guidance came through really strongly that I was meant to be the one to bring together that compendium, and that in
mhm,
doing so, I was going to receive deeper layers of my own personal healing. And so that was a really tall order because um, nervous system dysregulation had been one of my biggest problems for so many years.
mhm,
So I was like, how can I teach this? But it's true that by bringing all of that forward and then by helping all of these students and answering their questions, I've just grown and learned so much. And I've definitely received a lot of the pieces that I was looking
mhm,
for my own healing. And um, so what I want to share with the listeners is there's so many different tools and practices, and each one of us, as I shared a little bit earlier, each one of us is so unique. So finding the ones that really work well for you, creating your toolkit,
mhm,
um, and finding that mixture of your own medicine is so helpful. And then maybe writing down a list of the ones that work the best for you and putting it somewhere prominent so that when you really need self-regulation, you have access to the things that work the best for you. And so, yeah, I would love to invite anyone who's interested in taking the course. It's a 10-session course,
mhm,
and the sessions are between about 12 to 20 minutes long. So it's a
mhm,
very bite-sized course.
mhm,
And there's also, I just added a new brain retraining audio meditation, which brain retraining is another really key component to all of this work, to
mhm.
healing the nervous system. And um, so if anyone's interested in taking the course, I created a promo code for your audience, which is adult chair 20, all lowercase. And anyone listening will receive 20% off of the course if they go to www.nervoussystemsupport.org. And you just have to put the code all lowercase adult chair 20 at the checkout, and you'll receive 20% off of the course. So, and would love to see you in there.
Mm.
Um, if you have any questions, you're welcome to reach out to me on Instagram in my DMs. My name on Instagram is Prema Gaia. And you can also find me on YouTube under Prema Gaia, youtube.com/Prema Gaia. I have a bunch of videos on there with a lot of these tools as well.
Thank you. We're going to put all of that in the newsletter, in the show notes, and the newsletter
Oh,
actually that goes out every week. So thank you for that. Thank you for that discount. It sounds like an incredible course, one that we really need. One last question I had for you around nervous system regulation. So when we practice these tools, how long, people typically will say, how long does it take? How long does it take to start seeing success or relief or regulation, whatever term that might be, of the nervous system? Do you find if we practice our tools, not just when we're dysregulated, but if we have like a daily practice of doing something, do you find that
yeah.
you start noticing more regulation within a week, a month, a day, a year? Like what do you find in your with your students
Yeah,
with
that's a great
yourself?
question. So it's not only practicing doing the tools and exercises and the somatic practices, but it's also some key lifestyle changes.
Mhm.
And those things together then add up, plus brain retraining, which I have, as I shared, I have a brain retraining audio session in my course. But also lifestyle changes such as really understanding your body's circadian rhythms and starting to work with them rather than against them, which has
Mhm.
been a huge part for myself of regaining my energy and my vitality. So
Mm.
we talk about that, I think, in maybe session 7 or 8. So understanding your body's circadian rhythms, and then also understanding some of the lifestyle changes with, I talk about, maybe sometimes it can be helpful to get some labs done to find out if your
Mhm.
cortisol levels are high or low, and working with that accordingly. There's just certain lifestyle changes that you can make, and certain sort of like getting to the deeper roots
Yeah.
exploration that you do, that in combination with the tools and practices and the brain retraining, those things together, you can see really significant results within about 3 months.
Wow.
But it is
Right.
a holistic approach where,
Yeah.
it's really important to come to it from all the different angles, the
Okay.
lifestyle as well as the tools and practices, and then also understanding sometimes those repetitive unserving thoughts and beliefs and ruminations that we sometimes allow to hijack our brain state, which oftentimes that can really prolong some of these chronic illnesses, chronic pain, and things like that. So all of that, all of that is discussed in the course. So hopefully that's
Awesome.
helpful.
No, that's very helpful. I like hearing that. Yeah, because it's like, well, how long is it gonna take? 10 years or how long? So if we really consistently practice 3 months, that's wonderful. All right, here we
Mhm.
go again, nervoussystemsupport.org. Again, you're all over YouTube, Instagram. It's Premagia. Again, we'll put all that in the show notes. And thank you so much for being with us today. I really appreciate you.
So wonderful to be here with you, and so grateful for this opportunity to connect with your community. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. You said you would join us in the academy probably this maybe winter or spring. So we look forward to even a deeper dive into the nervous system. So thank you for being with us. This is wonderful.
Thank you. Many blessings.